Why don't you start by telling me a little bit more about your background? I know you work at Michelin tires, but
I've been with Michelin now for 30 years, and I started out in manufacturing and various, including manufacturing management. I was a production manager, really in both light vehicle tires as well as aircraft tires. And then I moved into marketing in 1995 in light vehicle tires again. And about 4 years ago, I moved into our truck tire business. I've been involved with Michelin, and Michelin's pretty progressive when it comes to technology. I mean, we've put a lot of things together over the years. The radial tire is probably the most. In the trucking industry, we actually invented the dual tire, believe it or not, in 1908. But along with Bud Wheel, who we talked into making wheels that work with duals. So I've been involved in some new technology introductions, and in trucking now I'm involved in a lot that has to do with improving the efficiency on the road, most notably our wide single tire, the X1.
Good. I remember you mentioned you've been through several paradigm shifts in the past.
Yeah, actually, one was the run flat tire for passenger and light truck. We'd actually developed the technology, but really hadn't done much with it. And what I did an analysis of the market and determined there's a portion of the market that wanted to eliminate the spare. Was motivated greatly by eliminating the spare just for gaining space in the vehicle, but they wanted to do it in a way that was really transparent to the operator of the vehicle. So it was a really technical challenge, but it was also one that you had to convince the market that you had a viable product, that in fact this thing would let you go for 50 or 100 miles with no air in it, because people believe that it would. So that went fairly well, and it was adopted by. You can always tell when something goes well when it's adopted by your competition.
Sure.
Actually, I think they ended up selling more tires than we did. So.
Huh.
But
do you think there are lessons learned there that could be applied to changing the culture now to
advance
more efficiency?
Yeah, it had a lot to do with information and credibility. It's one of the points that I keep making here is that it's not just enough to have a good technology. It's not just enough to have a technology that delivers the benefits. It has to be credible to the end user, because they're going to make a decision to put hard-earned, money on the line, and especially in a low-margin business, that can be very, very difficult to get them to do. So information is very important. The other thing I learned was it was important to have it within a framework of other supporting, or what we had the term called collaborative technologies, suspension systems that compensated for lack of comfort, for example. So when there were companies that could do that, BMW is the most notable example there. They ended up designing their cars so that they worked well. Consequently, now they've been very successful at eliminating the spare tire from their vehicles. So one is you've got to be credible, the technology has to work, but second is it has to work within a framework of the other components or technologies on the vehicle. And that's certainly the case with another one that I was involved in is radialization of the aircraft industry. There you have to actually introduce the product when the aircraft's being designed and built, qualified. There's a lot of reasons for that, but so it has to support certainly the whole business around aircraft. And then lastly, the wide-base signal, or the X1, even though it does everything that it's supposed to do in terms of saving fuel, it still has to work within the framework of not only the vehicle, but the environment that the driver's operating in, meaning availability on the road, that type of thing. So it's been a very interesting process of launching new technologies that were. By the way, we invented the dual. Now we're inventing the single to replace the dual. So we feel like we're qualified to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of answers this question, but I'll ask it again anyways if you have anything to add. I think you mentioned that it's not just going to take a single component that's going to make the difference, and it's not just going to take several components that will make the difference. It's more than that. And I think you just spoke to that with talking about information and, it's the whole package, and it's not just the technology. going to work for drivers and have availability. But is there anything else you would add to that?
Well, no, I think, and we talked a good bit about fragmentation, like it was a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Flexibility, if we'd used the word flexibility, we wouldn't have talked about it as a bad thing. We would have said it was a good thing. And in fact, it is a good thing. If you think of the truck as a place of business, we're asking someone to conform, and their place of business has to look like everyone else's. And in fact, that's not what they want to do. They want to have many, we talked about what 600,000 trucks are in the hands of fleets less than 5, is they want, their trucks are an extension of their personality in many cases. So I think we have to find a way to embrace that fragmentation, embrace it, be more flexible, so that we can, but that means working together well on various components, the choices. But I don't think we're going to be able to, even if we work together, the idea won't be to drive them towards one of 5 choices or one of 10 choices.
Right.
I think it's to work together well so we can allow and embrace this fragmentation and be more flexible. So yeah, it may be a little bit different take on fragmentation, but I think it's here. I think it's a good thing. And that truck. By the way, I go back to BMW, and I'm not proponent of them, but there's no. If you go to a BMW plant at any one time, there's no 2 vehicles in that plant that are identical, because they have a tremendous choice, but they found a way to work all the technologies together to satisfy their customer base. And I think we can do the same thing in trucking.
Right.
So.
That's a good example. I was also going to ask, we spent a lot of time discussing how states need to standardize their different regulations, and mentioned how we could use interstate regulations to replace state regulations. I was wondering if you could speak a little more to that, or if there were any downsides to doing that.
I mean, definitely there's, it's one point of view to say that the states need to conform to, at least on interstate highways, conform to a broader, or more consistent regulations so that trucks can operate on interstate, maybe the U.S. highways at least. There's certainly some restrictions that will happen on the states then. I mean, they get revenue today from their permitting operation. They share in the cost of any damage or issues with their infrastructure, so they should have a say in what comes through their state. But at the end of the day, it's incredibly inefficient for the truckers in this country to have to stop at state lines or have to be worried about getting a different permit for every state, and then in some cases having to wait for that permit. Now there are systems being put in place to make the permitting process faster, but really that's putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. I think it's really the states have got to get together, and I think the way that's done is called the federal government has got to do it, because it's just an insane environment today for trucking fleets.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't have any idea before this.
Yeah, it was amazing to me when I got in, because I was looking, because there's some restrictions today on the basis of old technology that was introduced back in the 80s that damaged the roads. So there were some restrictions put in place about single tires. And today, single tires replacing duals all of a sudden come under those restrictions or those regulations when they weren't even meant, and frankly don't do the same amount of damage. So literally, we, as well as in some cases our competition, have gone in, educated state departments of transportation, state trucking associations, to the facts and the science associated with it. But it's like one state at a time. It's a very, very lengthy process, and there's still today 5 states out there that have restrictions on weight per inch, load per inch, width of tires, which it was based upon something that existed back in the 80s. So, but that made me aware of the difference in transportation regulations coast to coast. So
yeah, big problem, but
yeah, it is for truckers for sure, and for us. We pay for that, by the way.
Oh, huh.
And everything we buy that's carried by trucks,
yeah,
we pay for that the inefficiency. So
great. And then just a few wrap-up questions. I was wondering what you're hoping to get out of this event or Charrette, and why you think efficiency is important for trucking.
Well, one thing I liked particularly about the definition of this charrette was it was going to deal with more than just the issue of fuel efficiency. It's going to deal with the broader thing having to do with freight efficiency and all the things that are associated with that. So that one thing that made it interesting from that standpoint. The other one for me though was the chance perhaps to, and I'm going to drop back a little bit. We're very good in our industry, and maybe the trucking industry better than anywhere else, of forming consortiums around introduction of a technology or a capability, whether it be aerodynamics or whether it be even in some cases low rolling resistance or whatever. I mean, we work together with wheel companies, we work together with suspension manufacturers, but what we are not as good at is joining together an information consortium. And that we've identified certainly as a major barrier, credible information. So hopefully out of this, one of the things we can do is that we as a group can work together to develop a methodology to deliver credible information to the end user who's going to make the decisions. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to get at.
That's great. And has there been anything that surprised you or shocked you out of this, or something new that you learned that hadn't really considered before?
I think one thing that's kind of shocked me about this is how open everyone has been. In terms of the information, I haven't really heard anything yet that was different than information shared in a lot of sources. But I think the fact that there's a lot of the same thoughts going in the same direction is encouraging.
Yeah.
Is encouraging. So.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully something great will come out of it.
I hope so too.
Great. Well, thanks a lot.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Maria.